Plant protein. Is it actually sustainable? The reason we chose the plant protein paradox is because there have been many studies showing the health and environmental benefits of switching from an animal-based protein diet towards a plant-based protein or hybrid diet. It has been shown that increasing to a primarily vegetarian diet is correlated to a decrease in the risk factors found in chronic diseases and cancers. A majority of Americans do not meet the recommendations for fiber in their daily diet, primarily due to a lack of eating vegetables. This also would be a really big benefit in switching to a diet that's predominantly vegetables, because increasing the consumption then in turn would allow for them to meet this crucial threshold when dieting. Alongside fiber, plant-based proteins have been found to be fewer in calories as compared to meat and have, in general, a lower fat content. This specifically targets health risks related to cardiovascular disease like obesity and pericardial fat. Plant proteins are a vital part of the vegetarian and vegan diets because of the essential amino acids they contain. Protein is essential in the human body, and the human body needs to consume at least 9 essential amino acids, while the rest are made within the body. While a majority of plant-based protein options do not contain all 9 amino acids, much like chicken or beef, some still do. Those who do not contain all 9 amino acids can still be applied using consideration and variety in food choices to cover all the bases. While one might think of this as a setback, the combination of fiber and fewer calories far outweigh this con. As Diana Kelly says, following a vegetarian diet can be nutritionally superior to any other way of eating because we know plants are loaded with nutrients to protect our health. A common misconception regarding plant-based proteins is that one cannot get enough of the recommended daily amount of protein, the goal being 0.8 grams per kilogram. But studies have shown the average American consumes over their daily recommended amount of protein, and this goal of 0.8 grams per kilogram is easily reachable using a strictly plant-based diet. Though we have shown a focus on plant proteins for vegetarian and vegan diets, these aspects also apply to hybrid diets. Changes such as switching a steak for beans or soybean products, such as tofu, can impact personal health in similar ways to cutting out an unhealthy snack. In mainstream news, this topic is not seen very often, though there is substantial evidence backing the role that plant proteins could play in overall health maintenance for all diets.
And vegetables and stuff within that area. Most of everyone can tell the prices of everything. Plant protein also reduces the carbon footprint. Plant protein is more sustainable, and the outcomes worldwide are positive in multiple areas. And then it can be more efficient than raising animals. When raising animals, you have to use a lot more resources and time versus plant-based protein diet. It doesn't take as much time to grow the things that you need, and you don't have to use as many resources or have to contribute a lot of labor as well. Plant-based diets in comparison to diets rich in animal products are more sustainable because they use fewer natural resources and are less taxing to the environment. Given the global population explosion and increase in the world, there is an increased demand for foods and animal food. Environmental data are rapidly accumulating on the unsustainability of current worldwide food consumption practices that are high in meat and dairy products. Natural non-renewable resources are becoming scarce, and environmental degradation is rapidly increasing. As the current trends of food consumption and environmental changes, food security and food sustainability both conditions changing course Global cardiac stream, downward shifts in meat and dairy consumption by large segments of the world's population. Other approaches such as food waste reduction and precision agriculture and or other technological advances have to be simultaneously pursued. However, they are insufficient to make the global food system sustainable. For millennia, meatless diets have been advocated on the basis of values, and large segments of the world population have thrived on plant-based diets. Going back to the plant-based diets worldwide seems to be a reasonable alternative for a sustainable future. Policies in favor of the global adoption of plant-based diets will simultaneously optimize the food supply, health, environmental, and social justice outcomes for the world's population.
Who this trend impacts. It impacts all of us, whether you adopt a vegetarian or vegan diet or not, because if everyone in the world adopted a vegan or vegetarian diet, the greenhouse emissions could drop by 70% by 2050. That is highly unrealistic. But even if just a certain percentage of those people on Earth did adopt a vegan or vegetarian or flexitarian approach, it would still drop greenhouse emissions because a lot of resources are used into producing animal protein. It would just be better overall for the environment, so better for everyone in the world. And individuals who do adopt this type of diet, even a flexitarian diet, which is basically just eating plant protein where you can. I've done that myself. So I don't buy meat at the grocery store. I really only eat meat whenever I go out to restaurants or things like that. But individuals who do adopt this diet can have a lower risk of cancer, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease. So all of those chronic illnesses that we learn about in pretty much every HHP class we take, this type of diet can lower the risk of all of those preventable diseases. By eating plant-based protein, there's also a lowered energy, water, and land usage. So just to touch on each one of those. Lowered energy. If you think about how much energy is used to keep the fans running in a chicken house, or for the fuel used to run the tractors on farms to farm beef cattle, that's all energy and that's all resources that could be saved. Again, the water. So the water comes in a couple places. One, water that you would give these livestock, and two, water that it takes to clean the livestock once they have been slaughtered. So meat, it has to be washed and cleaned, all the blood cleaned off of it before it can be transported to us in the grocery store. So that does take a lot of water. And then land usage. Actually, the number one cause of deforestation is land usage for farming, specifically beef cattle farming. They're pretty hefty animals, require a lot of land. I personally live on a beef cattle farm. So I kind of know firsthand the land usage that they take up. We actually have to have our field divided into two, so that way we keep them on one side and fertilize the other, wait for the grass to grow, and then switch. And we do that pretty regularly just because it takes a lot of land, a lot of grass to feed such a huge animal. And by eating plant-based protein, there are less resources for a higher yield. So all of these resources that I just mentioned, you can pretty much eliminate by eating plants directly, rather than giving those plants that you would have just eaten yourself to an animal. So most of the time farmers do have to supplement feed and feed like chickens. Those are all grains, vegetables that we could be just directly eating. And instead we're feeding those to another animal and then eating that other animal. So it just kind of eliminates a middleman in our diet. And then how does eating plant-based affect our health? So I have a little graphic over here showing the amount of protein per 1 cup cooked of all of these plant foods. My personal favorites, chickpeas, edamame, nut butters, oatmeal. Not really huge on tofu personally, but I have never really needed it because I eat plenty of protein. And then some of my favorite added proteins are chia and hemp seeds. You can kind of sprinkle those in anywhere. You don't really know that they're there. They don't have a taste. So all of these are super easy ways to get protein from plants instead of animals. And then we also have a video for that. That's so weird.
Profiles of about 30,000 non-vegetarians to 20,000 vegetarians and about 5,000 vegans, flexitarians, and no meat except fish eaters, allowing us to finally put to rest the perennial question, do vegetarians get enough protein? The average requirement is 42 grams of protein a day. Non-vegetarians get way more than they need, and so does everyone else. On average, vegetarians and vegans get 70% more protein than they need every day. Surprising that there's so much fuss about protein in this country when less than 3% of adults don't make the cut, presumably folks on extreme calorie-restricted diets who just aren't eating enough food, period. But 97% of Americans get enough protein. There is a nutrient, though, for which 97% of Americans are deficient. Now that's a problem nutrient. That's something we really have to work on. Less than 3% of Americans get even the recommended minimum adequate intake of fiber. So the question isn't where do you get your protein, but where do you get your fiber? We only get about 15 grams a day. The minimum daily requirement is 31.5, so we get less than half the minimum. If you break it down by age and gender, after studying the diets of 12,761 Americans, the percentage of men between ages 14 and 50 getting the minimum adequate intake, 0. This deficit is stunning, in that dietary fiber has been protectively associated with the risk of diabetes, metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular disease, obesity, and various cancers, as well as high cholesterol, blood pressure, and blood sugars. Therefore, it is not surprising that fiber is now listed as a nutrient of concern in the dietary guidelines. Protein is not. One problem is that most people have no idea what's in their food. More than half of Americans think steak is a significant fiber source. By definition, fiber is only found in plants. There's no fiber in meat, dairy, or eggs, and little or no fiber in junk food. Therein lies the problem. Americans should be eating more beans, vegetables, fruits, whole grains. How are we doing on that? Well, 96% of Americans don't eat the recommended minimum daily intake of beans. 96% don't eat the measly minimum for greens. 99% don't get enough whole grains. Look at these numbers. Nearly the entire U.S. population fails to eat enough whole plant foods, and it's not getting any better. A lack of progress that's disappointing. Even semi-vegetarians, though, make the minimum for fiber, and those eating completely plant-based diets triple the average American intake. Now, when closing the fiber gap, you want to do it gradually, no more than about 5 extra grams of fiber a day each week until you can kind of work your way up, but it's worth it. Plant-derived diets tend to contribute significantly less fat, saturated fat, cholesterol, foodborne pathogens, while at the same time offering more fiber, folate, vitamin C, phytochemicals, all essential factors for disease prevention and optimal health and well-being. And the more plant foods, the better. Whole plant foods, the better. If you compare the nutritional quality of vegan versus vegetarian, semi-vegetarian, pesco-vegetarian, and omnivorous diets, traditional healthy diet indexing systems like compliance with the dietary guidelines consistently indicate the most plant-based diet as the most healthy one.
Awesome. That's all we have.